We like to believe that we live in a completely free society, entirely free from the rigid ideologies and brainwashing of the past. But what if the exact opposite is true, and you are actually more programmed today than any other generation in human history? Contemporary philosopher Slavoj Žižek argues that ideology is not a set of strict political rules you are explicitly forced to follow. Instead, ideology is the invisible water we are swimming in, quietly dictating your desires, your fears, and even your concept of happiness. We are absolutely trapped inside the trash can of ideology. And the most terrifying part is that we genuinely believe we are completely free. To understand this invisible prison, we have to look at the brilliant, chaotic mind of Slavoj Žižek. He is arguably the most dangerous and entertaining cultural critic alive today, famously blending high-level psychoanalysis with modern pop culture like movies and fast food. Žižek forces us to completely rethink our modern reality, pointing out that our everyday common sense is actually heavily manipulated by capitalist structures. He acts as the intellectual alarm clock for a society that has comfortably fallen asleep in a highly optimized digital dream world. If you are willing to listen to his aggressive, uncomfortable truths, you will never look at your morning coffee or your social media feed the same way again.
Žižek often uses a brilliant metaphor from the classic sci-fi movie They Live to explain how modern society actually manipulates us. He explains that ideology is not a pair of glasses you take off to see the real, objective world clearly. Ideology is actually a pair of invisible glasses that have been permanently glued to your face since the day you were born. These glasses color everything you see, secretly filtering the raw chaos of reality into a neat, acceptable narrative that serves the system. To truly wake up, you do not just open your eyes, you have to painfully rip these ideological glasses right off your face. One of the most aggressive ideologies we face today is what Žižek calls the absolute tyranny of happiness. In the past, authority figures commanded you to do your duty, allowing you to secretly hate your life as long as you obeyed. Today, the modern capitalist system demands something far more invasive. It explicitly commands you to enjoy your life at all times. If you are not constantly happy, traveling, and living your best life, society makes you feel like an absolute irredeemable failure. This cultural obsession with forced enjoyment is incredibly toxic, turning our natural human sadness into a shameful disease that must be permanently hidden.
This desperate need to feel good about ourselves has birthed a highly manipulative system that Žižek calls cultural capitalism. We no longer just buy a product for its actual utility. We buy the moral redemption that comes neatly packaged inside the product. When you buy a slightly more expensive pair of eco-friendly shoes, you are not just buying necessary footwear. You are essentially buying the comforting feeling that you are a good, responsible person who actively cares about the environment. The capitalist system cleverly sells you the exact moral cure for the guilt that capitalism itself created in the first place. You can see this brilliantly disguised trap every time you walk into a modern, ethically branded coffee shop. They explicitly tell you that for every cup of overpriced coffee you buy, 5 cents goes to saving the rainforest or helping a struggling farmer. Žižek points out that your charitable duty is already included in the price, allowing you to simply consume without doing any real activism. You successfully buy off your guilt with a few extra cents, effectively neutralizing any actual desire you had to genuinely change the world. It is a genius, terrifying marketing gimmick that keeps the destructive system running while making you feel like a literal superhero. Beyond our spending habits, Žižek argues that we do not even truly understand our own deepest, most personal desires. We are socially programmed to think we want the perfect job, the flawless partner, and the massive house in the suburbs. However, psychoanalysis reveals that we do not actually want to acquire the thing we desire. We simply want to continue desiring it indefinitely. Once we finally get the exact thing we have been chasing for years, we almost immediately feel a crushing sense of emptiness. We are deeply addicted to the chase itself,
constantly hunting for the next digital distraction to avoid facing the terrifying emptiness of our own minds. This constant performance of desire is always directed at an invisible audience that Zizek refers to as the big other. The big other is the imaginary judgmental entity we constantly try to impress, whether it represents society, our parents, or the social media algorithm. We curate our lives, post our vacation photos, and voice our political opinions entirely for the unblinking gaze of this invisible judge. We are terrified of what the big other will think if we suddenly drop the act and admit we are completely miserable. Reclaiming your mind requires you to finally realize that the big other does not actually exist, and you are performing for an entirely empty room.
Because we are performing for this fake audience, we aggressively police each other with the violent culture of positive energy. If someone is grieving, angry, or deeply depressed, our culture immediately rushes to silence them with toxic positivity and empty self-help slogans. Žižek warns that this forced positivity is actually a form of psychological violence that completely denies our basic human reality. By refusing to acknowledge the darkness and the suffering in the world, we create a deeply neurotic, superficial society that is completely out of touch with reality. You are absolutely allowed to be miserable, and acknowledging that misery is the first necessary step toward actual, grounded sanity. This sanitization of the world has even destroyed our concept of love, reducing it to a safe, calculated transaction on modern dating apps. We endlessly swipe left and right, looking for a perfectly optimized partner without any flaws, risks, or complicated emotional baggage. But Žižek boldly claims that true, authentic love is not supposed to be safe. It is supposed to be a deeply traumatic, life-changing event. Real love completely, violently shatters your selfish routine and forces you to merge your chaotic life with another deeply flawed human being. If your romance does not completely terrify you and change the very core of who you are, it is simply not real love. Even our modern attempts to rebel against the system have been completely absorbed and neutralized by the ideology itself. When you buy a mass-produced t-shirt featuring a famous revolutionary leader, you are just feeding the exact capitalist machine you claim to hate. Our protests and online outrage have become highly profitable, commodified aesthetics that make absolutely zero difference in the real world. We are allowed to complain on social media all day long as we keep buying the products and paying our monthly digital subscriptions. True rebellion is incredibly rare because the system is remarkably brilliant at turning our genuine anger into just another trendy, consumable product. Waking up from this deeply comfortable, highly optimized matrix is not a peaceful, enlightening journey filled with yoga and meditation. According to Žižek, stepping out of ideology is a brutal, agonizing process that completely shatters your entire understanding of reality. It hurts tremendously to realize that your goals, your moral superiority, and your desires were meticulously programmed by a system that views you as a battery. Most people catch a brief, terrifying glimpse of the real world and immediately run back to the comforting illusions of the ideological trash can. It takes an immense amount of raw psychological courage to stand in the cold, naked truth of our modern absurdity. So, how do we actively fight back against a massive system that absorbs and profits off of our every single move? Žižek frequently references the famous literary character Bartleby, who famously responded to every demand by simply saying, "I would prefer not to." In a world that constantly demands you to act, consume, argue, and optimize, the most radical thing you can do is aggressively do nothing. By simply refusing to participate in the frantic, exhausting game of modern life, you actively short-circuit the entire ideological machine. Sometimes, absolute, stubborn passivity is the most powerful weapon you have to finally reclaim your stolen human agency. You have to stop searching for some magical, hidden meaning behind the chaos of the modern world. There is no secret master plan, no perfectly just universe, and absolutely no guarantee that things will eventually work out for the best. Žižek challenges you to look directly at the messy,
unfair, and chaotic reality of existence, and accept it without the comforting ideological filter. Once you stop demanding that the universe make perfect logical sense, you are finally free to navigate it boldly on your own terms. You stop being a passive consumer of reality and finally become an active, wide-awake participant in your own life.
Slavoj Žižek's philosophy is a brutal, necessary wake-up call for a generation that is completely addicted to incredibly comfortable lies. You will never be truly free as long as you let the system dictate what you buy, how you love, and what you desire. Stop trying to be perfectly happy, abandon the exhausting pursuit of digital validation, and bravely embrace the terrifying messiness of real life. Freedom is not the ability to choose from 100 different brands of coffee. Freedom is realizing the entire coffee shop is a psychological trap. Take off the invisible glasses, step out of the ideological trash can, and finally see the world for what it truly is.